So let's see what happens if we actually change some of the other pieces on the screen here. So one of the things you'll notice is every command in Java ends in a semicolon. It's actually how Java knows that one command has stopped and the next one has started. So if we delete the semicolon and we go to compile, notice here we no longer get our happy little message. Now we get an error. Error means I can't run your code. I can't compile it, and it's because Java doesn't understand what you've told it to do. Now in this situation we get a nice error. It actually tells us semicolon expected, and it points to where it thinks the semicolon should go. So if we put the semicolon back and recompile, everything's happy. Now, not all the error messages you're going to get are that clear. So let's see what happens if I erase one of the quotation marks here. And just for good measure, let's get rid of all of them. The first thing you'll notice is the Welcome to AP Computer Science changed colors. The color change shows that Java sees these words differently now. So Java thinks that these are commands that we've typed in. So when I go to compile, now we get a whole ton of error messages. It's expecting a parentheses, a semicolon. It's telling us for this one, computer is not a statement, and then another semicolon expected. So that one little tiny change actually created a huge number of errors, and unfortunately none of the errors tell us, hey silly, you're missing a quotation mark. So that's one of the problems you'll hit this year. Sometimes your error messages are not always going to match what you see on the screen. So your job as programmer is to look for certain patterns. One of the things that's kind of a gotcha with the print is if we forget those quotation marks, we get all those silly error messages. So now when we recompile, everything's fine. Now the process we just went through of finding errors is also called debugging. And there's kind of an interesting story about where the first computer bug came from. So there's a link in the course online if you're interested where you can follow that story. So what we've seen with output is basically Java is set to print everything that's in between those quotation marks. That's what's called a string. Basically a string is anything that's not used for number calculation. So it can hold words, characters, digits like 0 through 9, and symbols like percent signs, stars, things like that. And again, the way we show Java that we want to print a string to the screen is we put it inside a set of quotation marks. So let's add something to our code. Let's say welcome to AP Computer Science, and on the next line I want it to say programming in Java. We want to be specific about what language we're using. All right, so we add a second system.out.println, and I'm going to say programming in Java. Okay, no mistakes. Now one of the things you'll see throughout the year is it's almost impossible to type a longer program in and not make some kind of mistake. I do it all the time. I'm a pretty bad typer. So a lot of Java and programming in general is problem solving, fixing little mistakes, tweaking it until you get exactly the output you want. So when we run this, okay, now this is not exactly what we wanted. It says welcome to AP Computer Science, and then we have programming. So it's kind of science programming in Java. Obviously, when we talked about this, I wanted the programming in Java to be on the next line. Now, Java has done exactly what we told it to do. It printed, and then it printed again. Now you'll notice here the second print command that I use has a little ln on it. So the ln command basically says print and then bump down a line. So we're going to change our first print to println, recompile, and rerun, and now we get the correct result. So the order here makes a difference. The print happens first. So first it takes everything inside the quotation marks and shows that on the screen. Then that ln, if you've ever used an old-fashioned typewriter, it's basically what it's doing. It's bumping it down and going to the beginning of the next line. So it's saying whatever you print after me is going to start on the next line. Now let's change this middle one back to a print, and then add another. All right. Let's see. Let's just add the word MOOC, since that's what we're doing. All right, recompile and rerun it, and again you'll see the same thing happen. It says programming in Java MOOC, and that's not what we want. We want the MOOC on its own line. So even though the MOOC has a println, that ln is happening after it prints MOOC, not before. So to fix that, the middle command also needs to have the ln. So basically we've learned our first two commands today. We've learned print, which keeps everything on the same line, and then println, which displays stuff on the screen and then bumps to the beginning of the next line. This course is about learning basic Java commands, so you can give a computer a set of directions called a program, and the computer follows your directions in order to create a piece of software. Every piece of software you've used, from an app on your cell phone to browsing the internet, have gone through this process. A programmer sat down and gave the computer directions by writing code, and that eventually creates the piece of software you use at the end. As we've seen, the computer is very literal, so the commands we type in must be exact, and the order we type them in is going to make a big difference. Today, our focus was just on displaying information on the screen. In the next lesson, we'll learn a few more details about that, and then we'll be ready to actually start asking the user to type in some input.